there's a narrative that we as Americans have built around the aftermath of September 11th, 2001. And that narrative is that we as Americans have never been so united as we were back then. And I often hear this brought up in the context of our current division. The country has never been so divided as it is right now. But when I look back at September 11th, 2001, I see things very differently. I see the aftermath in a much darker light, because that is where I identify a turning point, where I see the undercurrent that brought us to MAGA beginning to develop. The seeds of MAGA existed from the very inception of this country, but the germination happened after September 11th. First of all, after September 11th, we magnified American exceptionalism tenfold. We received overwhelming global support. But rather than expressing gratitude and humility, we positioned ourselves and our country as inherently virtuous and built a storyline where we were attacked solely because of our virtue. There is no justification for those attacks. However, one can argue that that should have been a moment for introspection, for self-examination, to consider the role of American foreign policy and global inequality, but it wasn't. And so this is where American exceptionalism began to lead us toward MAGA. Second of all, this is when we began to see the erosion of civil liberties, and when Americans began to accept relinquishing those liberties. We had the Patriot Act, warrantless wiretapping, Guantanamo. All of this prepared us for future authoritarian tactics, normalized the loss of key rights, and we did not recognize the risk at the time. We did not fight back as we should have. And again, this loss of civil liberties led to the rise of MAGA. Third, after 9/11, there was a significant increase in the dehumanization and the othering of certain groups of people, specifically Muslims. Hate was legitimized under the guise of patriotism, and when you normalize hate towards one group, it paves the path for dehumanizing other groups as well. And again, this was fundamental for the establishment of the MAGA movement. Fourth, toxic patriotism. Arguably, America has always been much more patriotic than any other country around the world. This is something that people from Europe comment on frequently. But we escalated that patriotism to an absurd level after 9/11. There were flags everywhere. We renamed French fries freedom fries. There were patriotic country anthems about kicking other countries' asses. Any form of dissent was seen as unpatriotic. The term support the troops was weaponized. Our military could not be questioned. Nationalism was repackaged as patriotism. Fifth was the resurgence in a Christian national identity. President Bush at the time used explicit religious language and framed the war on terror as a war between good and evil. We adopted as a country a Christian identity during this period of time, regardless of the fact that our founding fathers were not Christian and we have never been a Christian nation. We began blurring the line between church and state, which again led to the buildup of Christian nationalism within the MAGA movement. And sixth, we developed a tolerance during this time for war crimes and for cruelty. We had Abu Ghraib, we had enhanced interrogation techniques, drone strikes which killed civilians. Fear was instilled in the populace and used as a justification for cruelty. Cruelty began to be seen as a strength, as necessary for the protection of American values. So while we did elect Obama and see marriage equality after September 11th, 2001, the undercurrents that would take us back to the place we're in now, with this authoritarian, Christian nationalist, white supremacist, MAGA movement, really began building on September 11th. The signs are there in hindsight. Fascism doesn't descend overnight. It builds slowly, without anyone noticing. It is only looking back now, with the knowledge of what was to come, that we have a complete picture of what the response to the September 11th attacks would lead us to.